All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Today is Saturday, December 5th, 2020, around 2:11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Welcome. I am your host, Permission to Exist, and I am here today with a very, very special guest, R.E. Dossett, who does go by the name Rashid. So you will hear me call him Rashid throughout our presentation today.
Guest,
Uh-oh.
R.E. Dossett.
Hold on, I've got feedback.
Rashid,
Hold on.
You will hear me call him Rashid throughout our
Hold
presentation
on.
today.
Where is it playing from?
R.E.
Oh my
Dossett.
God.
Hold on, I've got feedback.
What happened?
Hold on.
Hang on. Oh my gosh.
Where is it playing from? Oh my God.
What happened? PTE.
I think you have to mute yours, RE.
Okay, hold on. How do I mute this stop cam mic?
I think you have to mute yours.
Hold on.
There we go. I think we fixed it.
Okay, good. Continue.
Do you have it playing on your computer?
No.
It might be mine. No, I think I got it. It was my fault. I'm so sorry. I had it playing.
Doesn't matter. Continue.
Okay. Whew. Sorry, you guys. This is my first time doing this. So technical error, but I think we fixed it. I had it playing from my Safari. Welcome, everyone. Sorry about that. Welcome to the live stream. This is highly anticipated. We've been waiting for this all day long. I'm super excited. Before we get started, I do want to give a huge shout out to our December 2020 sponsors, Teens to Be Heard. This is a volunteer organization where teens learn to speak to be heard. They are based in Paterson, New Jersey, home of Joe Clark, Hurricane Carter, and Lou Costello. It is a judgment-free zone and a safe haven for teens. Here, teens learn to grow to become professional citizens in the community. They are on Instagram and Facebook. And if you'd like to financially support them, their Cash App is there on the screen. I would also like to go ahead and say that for this sponsor and any other sponsor, them being attached to the content is not an endorsement of the content, okay? We are going to get into some heavy stuff tonight. So I don't want you guys to think that Teens to Be Heard is going and talking to the kids about this kind of stuff. Any sponsor is really just supporting the channel and not necessarily the content. So please do not attach the two to each other, okay? And with that, I'm going to give a very brief context to our conversation this evening. Then I'm actually going to introduce our guest, let him introduce himself, and we are going to start the show. So the context of tonight's show is our guest has a YouTube channel. Please do go check him out and subscribe. His content is very good, very thought-provoking, very, very intelligent, and will have you sitting and really thinking about what has been said and shared. On a video that R.E. Dossett did a couple of months ago, he made the comment that when narcissists or evil individuals are kind to you, they break the demonic contract. And you guys, I searched and searched and searched for that video, and I know it's still out there, but I just can't find it because it's kind of embedded somewhere within other content. So I said, why don't I invite the content creator himself to come explain a little bit more about what he meant by breaking the demonic contract. So we're going to talk a little bit about what the demonic contract is, what happens to break it or when it gets broken, what that means in terms of how narcissists begin to relate to you, to each other, to the demonic entities. Oh, we're going to go way deep this evening. So with no further ado, I would like to go ahead and introduce my guest, R.E. Dossett, Rashid. Thank you so much for being here. Please introduce yourself, and then you can just kind of start the conversation with what is the demonic contract? How did it come to be? Kind of how you explained it to me as we were chit-chatting prior to the show. Rashid, take it away.
Thank you, PTE, and thank you, listeners. I'm Rashid Dossett. I'm born on Curacao, which is overseas territory of the Netherlands. So I speak Papiamento and Dutch as my native language. I'm an anthropologist. I'm a political scholar. Also, I'm a sociologist. I'm specialized in European Union, also Latin American studies. I conducted fieldwork in Guatemala on my own. And I'm also a novelist. I published 8 novels already, inspired by the former Spanish Empire. I speak multiple languages, so that's me. And I'm a believer. And I'm here to, on the request of PTE, to teach you about demonic contracts, what it is, how to recognize this, and especially what can you do about it when you're dealing with people with demonic contracts, because this has to be constructive for you. So let me dive right into it for the next half hour. It will be just me talking, and you can take notes. And if you have questions, just ask them, and PT will note them, and later on we'll elaborate on them. So it goes like this. As human beings, we are vulnerable creatures. We know that. We're quite vulnerable. Our bodies are mortal. Okay, we know that. But here's the thing. We are not just bodies because we're not animals. We are spirit beings with physical extensions. Okay? And as a spirit being, in you, the spirit, there's this part called the soul, where there is your mind and emotions, and also your other spirit abilities as your energy centers, and which includes your inner radar or your intuition. And you have a physical extension, which is the body that you're born with. Okay? And males have male bodies, females have female bodies. Okay? So as a female, you are a female human spirit, as a male, you are a male human spirit, and both have an energy emission. So you have an energy field around you, and from this energy field, you emit energy to the environment. Okay? Just like you can compare to some type of electricity or some scent that you emit. And this affects the environment, okay? And male energy is very heavy and fierce, like raging electricity. And female energy is more like a softening of type of energy, like water waves, okay? That's how you can compare it. I know it's a fake comparison, but that's how you can compare it a little bit. Both masculine and feminine energy needs to be in balance so that there's harmony in the human species. So human sexuality is a spirit thing that works out in the physical. Okay, that I want to point out also. All of that, it's part of our being as a human species. So as spirit beings, we emit to the environment. Okay, now if we are in the right state of mind, we emit joy and gladness, and this will benefit each other. Because as human being, your physical extension is your body needs water, food, clothes. So the physical things in order to survive, because the body is mortal. If the body was immortal, you would still need those things for the body to function properly. So the body needs those things anyway. But as a spirit being, is what you are, you have spirit needs also. For example, the needs to belong to the human species, the needs to be appreciated, the need to be valued. And you also have spirit abilities. Just like you have the 5 senses, you also have spirit senses. One of them is the inner radar, which is the most significant one, is how that's your scanner that scans the environment, so you can feel positive tensions and negative tensions. Okay, they also call it the gut feeling because the inner radar works out in the physical. So if you are in a room where a lot of people are murmuring, complaining, you tend to feel heavy, even if you're not aware they're murmuring, complaining, because your inner radar picks it up and you feel the negativity in your body. Okay, but if you enter a room where everyone is joyful and glad to see you, it is as if they're carrying you on both arms as a child. Okay, and so the environment affects you. If you're in a negative laden environment, you can get physically sick. You may even get accidents. You may even die. If you're in a positive environment, you tend to recover very quickly. Okay, so now that I've explained that, understand the following: mankind, so our species, is in a fallen state since Adam and Eve. Okay, when it tricked into self-reliance, we're now in a fallen state because we were not designed to carry the weight of our own existence. We're meant to rely on the Heavenly Father who holds heaven and earth together with his might. Okay? And we who are made in his image, the males directly, females indirectly. I may elaborate on that later on. We are supposed to rely on the energetic power that comes from the Heavenly Father, and we now can use that in our energetic abilities or our spirit abilities to relate well to one another. That's the purpose of us, the human species. But due to the fallen state, we're all born operating in lack. Okay? That's what it is. Because of that, we also have mortal bodies now. So, and that will be corrected when Christ returns, but that's another subject. So for now, we're all vulnerable creatures and we're in a fallen state. So in this fallen state, we tend to flee from any type of discomfort. Now look, if a situation is dangerous, it's understandable that you want to get away from it. For example, if you enter a store and someone suddenly picks up a knife or a gun, they want to rob the place, you can flee. Okay? Or if someone threatens to kill you or attack you, you can move out from the situation. So physically fleeing itself is not bad if it's appropriate. But fallen mankind, so all of us, we have the tendency to just flee, to just want to be left alone. And we even feel entitled to be left alone. Now, there's nothing wrong with entitlement. For example, as a human being, you're entitled to safety, so others should consider your safety. And based on this natural entitlement, you have traffic rules, just to prevent harm from affecting human beings. Okay, so entitlement itself is nothing wrong with it, but too often human beings they develop unnatural entitlements that can't be justified. For example, a man has sex with a woman, she becomes pregnant. He's a biological dad, and because of that, he feels he has the right to abuse and neglect the children, and the children, even if they're grown adults, have to give honor and the validation to him. That's something promoted by many religions, and they abuse a scripture from the Old and New Testament to justify this. That's an unnatural entitlement. That's something nobody is entitled to. So you have natural entitlements, and you have toxic entitlements. Toxic entitlements are not natural, so that people can't justify it. Now, our species tends to flee all the time. And this is quite dangerous because you can't always flee. You have to deal with uncomfortable stuff. Look, if you go outside and suddenly rains, are you going to say, I never asked for rain? So you're just going to walk around like that? No, you need to put on a coat or something to anticipate. Or are you going to say, I never asked for rain or snow, and just enter your car? You may get into an accident. So we can't just flee and expect everything on our terms. We need to be flexible and relate constructively with ourselves and with others. But this is something that requires self-reflection and effort, collectively and then also individually, because we're vulnerable creatures who rely on one another. And here's the thing. Your native language didn't come from you. Your first name didn't come from you. Your mannerisms, most of them didn't come from you. So you are also shaped by your environment. Okay? So you can't help how you were shaped by the environment. That's not on you. But what it is on you is to reflect, to see whether you were shaped correctly, and then rectify it as far as depends on you, so that you remain better. Okay? So responsibility does not mean that you have to make sure everything works out well in your life. That's not possible. Nobody can guarantee that. Even if you make all the right decisions, if the environment is negative, you'll still have a bad outcome. Okay? You're not the only human being on the earth. Okay? So responsibility simply means rejoicing that you have options and go for better options. That's the only thing the responsibility is. Okay? But the world makes responsibility into you having to fix everything about you. No. You can't even do that. You can only go for better options. So, now that this is out, understand that when people keep on fleeing, nothing can work. For things to work in a community, people need to get along. And to get along, they need to deal with one another. But because fallen mankind always wants to flee, you need to have something to force people to relate to one another. And that thing is society. Society is an agreement of adults to all flee together. It goes like this. The adults realize we all want to flee. We don't want to deal with stuff, but at the same time, we want life to work out. We want to have a joyous community. We want to have healthy sexual relationships. We want to have all the good, but we don't want to be good, which requires us to invest. Because that means acknowledging we're vulnerable creatures and that we don't have control. That means that we have to deal with uncomfortable stuff. We don't want that. We're not able to. We're not mentally fit for it. So we're all going to flee in this together, and those who flee with us, we attack and harm and kill them, so we are left alone. That's what society is. Society is a narcissistic arrangement of a group of adults that don't want to face life. But at the same time, they mask it as something else. So all of us have been raised one way or the other by a narcissist, and that narcissist is society. Okay? I'm an anthropologist, so I'm unapologetic in how I explain it. So I'm also a sociologist, and sociologists tend to be more politically correct. Well, I'm both anthropologist and sociologist, so that's why as an anthropologist, I'm very direct in it and explaining you what it is. So society is a fear construct that enables adults to flee. so they don't have to face their fallen state. So understand, all of us were groomed and trained into ways of thinking and relating to others that are not for our best interest. So those are the things we need to be delivered from by renewal of our minds. Okay? So the thing is with narcissists, first let me explain what a narcissist is. A narcissist is simply someone that persists in fleeing when it's obvious that fleeing doesn't work. Because all human beings have this thing in us called empathy, which is a spirit ability. So anytime the environment is too heavy, there's too much negative energy, the empathy kind of pushes us back, saying, okay, you need to get out of here. So you have the inner radar that scans whether it's good or bad, and you have the empathy, which is related to the inner radar, that pushes you to take action for things to be better. So if you just talk to someone in a very angry way, your empathy will make you feel bad and how you treat that individual, then you realize, no, I need to relate better. Or if someone feels sad, your empathy will push you to take action just so that the individual doesn't feel rejected. So empathy is related to our vulnerability. So your empathy is there to cause you to relate well to your fellow human beings so that there's harmony and peace. And you are a vulnerable creature. So your empathy and your vulnerability go hand in hand, as well as your human sexuality. All of them go hand in hand together. But what happens with a narcissist is they never want to admit their human vulnerabilities. Being human means being vulnerable. That's how we are designed. So for you to not want to acknowledge your vulnerability nor your weaknesses, that's unnatural. It's actually quite insane. But the narcissist is a human being that keeps on wanting to do it. So eventually, they'll crash down because you can't always flee, okay? Look, if I would enter a kitchen and there are all those ingredients over there, apples, raisins, currants, butter, milk, all-purpose flour, and there is an oven and all of that. If I want an apple pie, I know what I have to do. I need to put on the physical effort to make the batter and to preheat the oven, then put it in the oven, then take it out of the oven, let it cool down, and then I can eat the apple pie. Or someone else should have done the work for me, then I can eat the apple pie. I can't just walk into a kitchen and wait till the apple pie magically forms itself and I can eat it. No, because even if someone would come and deliver me an apple pie that they've made for me, I still need to use my hands, put it in my mouth, and chew it and swallow it. So there's always natural effort involved. So for me to just enter into a kitchen and expect the apple pie to just magically appear, if I would say that, anyone would call the psychiatrist and say, we have an inpatient for you. This man really needs help. And rightfully so. But that's how the narcissist is. They just want to flee from life, but they want all the benefits of life. And that cannot happen. So they want all the best from other people, but they don't want to actually deal with the fact that they're vulnerable creatures, and they need to deal with also the weight that comes with life. Okay? So if you have such an individual, they can't function anywhere. And they'll get angry people behind them because they never want to invest in the environment. So those people that are fleeing all the time, even when they know the fleeing is stopped, they even go against their own empathy and their own inner radar. So they go against their own humanity to keep on fleeing. They become bitter at being human. And when this happens, you remember we are spirit beings, we have energy fields and we emit energy. They bring forth this polluting, dark energy, which is like stinking, foaming slime. Imagine stinking, foaming slime. That's how the type of energy is they put out. It's very heavy and very toxic, very heavy also. So when this happens, unclean spirits, or say demonic entities, who are homeless creeps anyway, cast out of heaven, they notice this. We see human bodies when we interact with another human being. Some of us can see the spirit world, so we see someone's energy field. We don't see the energy field, we don't see the energy emission, we can feel it. We all feel the energy that people emit. We don't see the energy field, but we all feel it. We all experience it in our bodies. Now, unclean spirits see clearly how someone's energy field is, what the condition is. Okay, so if someone has childhood trauma and they have cracks in the energy field, unclean spirits see it. They can even read what type of trauma they have. If someone thinks about sex all the time, they have this sexualized energy they give off, so unclean spirits can see that and can see what they want. Okay, we human beings tend to guess through non-verbal cues what someone wants, but unclean spirits can see things directly. So when unclean spirits see, oh, this individual is bitter than humanity, they approach the individual telepathically. And the unclean spirits suggest to the individual, let's say you have a woman called Leah, okay? And Leah is 22 years old and she is upset with being a feminine, with being female. She just wants to be left alone. She does want she does want all the good in life, so people to treat her well, to value all of that, but for her to do with others requires effort. She doesn't want that. So she is defective. She knows it and she knows it's not acceptable, but she just doesn't want to face it. But every day force her to face it, so she wants to escape. Now that she's so desperate to escape, entities approach her. Okay? And the demons are following Leah. We recognize that you have issues, you don't want to deal with stuff. And Leah thinks, of course, I don't want to deal with stuff. I just want to be left alone. Why can't I just be left alone? Why did the Heavenly Father, God, make me this way anyway? And she goes off and off. Then the demons tell her, don't worry. You can't stand your humanity. We can't either. We can't even stand ourselves as evil spirits. But hey, this is what we have in common. This is what we're going to do. We have your back if you sponsor us. You keep emitting this bitterness, keep on doing it, because we eat that bitterness, and that makes us able to operate in earthly realm. So when you give us that negativity out of you, and when you cause the negativity into others, we can eat. And when we eat, we as energetic parasites become powerful, and now we can cover you. So next time you're very unkind to someone, and someone wants to address you, yeah, we have this artificial energy layer on top of your energy field, which hinders the angry emotion from the other individual to come to you. So the individual suddenly will feel bounced back when they're about to confront you. Or if you are in a marriage with someone and you just want to take advantage of the man, we'll make sure that you'll get a man that's so wounded that he won't even realize you're exploiting him. That's how you continue, because listen, we need you to be bitter so we can feed off your bitterness. And we need this bitterness to build this artificial layer around you. So you need to remain in that bitterness, and you also should have people around you that enable this bitterness, because then we can work for you, and the bubble works. The moment you stop being in bitterness, the bubble will crack and we can't help you. Then Leah thinks, you know what? I'm fine with this. She enters into this deal with the evil spirits. And that is the demonic contract narcissists entered into. Okay? That is what it is. So when someone is in a demonic contract, they have agreed to sign off their humanity, and they persist in a delusion, namely that they can avoid life, but at the same time benefit from life. And now they feel confident in exploiting other people because they are covered. You have those unclean spirits that watch out for them, and the unclean spirits have an energy layer around the individual that enables them to continue. But here's the catch. That artificial energy layer is artificial. It's not natural, so it will only last for maybe 2 or 3 years, sometimes even a few months. Okay? So now, when the bubble is about to dissolve, the narcissist needs to renew it. So the narcissist needs another negative climate so that the layer grows back on. Okay? So that the foaming, stinking energy grows back. Okay? It's like it's like a stinking moisture that have growing on top of your energy field. They need to renew it. That's like, for example, you can be at work. You have Jeff. Jeff's a colleague. Jeff always smiles with you. At home, Jeff is beating the crap out of his wife and children. But at work, he's very kind. So one day, Jeff suddenly acts out against you, saying, oh, he's going to cuss you out and say, hey, you're always very annoying, this and that. Why do I even work with you? I don't want to see you around here, blah, blah, blah. And you're very shocked. Everyone at the workplace is shocked. So this negative climate. And now because of this negative climate, the artificial bubble grows back and the cover works. So the contract is renewed. Then 3 days later, Jeff says, hey man, nice to see you. And you're thinking, what? 3 days ago, you cussed me out for the worst things possible, saying you never liked me, that you wish her worse on me. Now suddenly you're very happy to see me? You're going to be very confused. This is what happens. That narcissist is in a demonic contract, and his bubble was about to expire. And this thing is that bubble that kept him safe from the ruining him, because he has a lot of people that wants to take their anger out on him for what he did to them, but because of that bubble, people can't come close to them because that bubble keeps negative energy at a distance. Okay, but it keeps the narcissist in a state of negativity. So they need to renew it with conflict from time to time. Okay, and that's why in narcissistic exploitative relationships, one of the partners tends to periodically start fights. Why? Because they need to renew the bubble. Okay, and here's the thing: when a narcissist in a demonic contract is around positive-minded people, it's detrimental. You know why? Because positive energy is very fierce and very strong and like burning fire. And that burning fire burns down that cold, foaming layer that demons build on top of the energy field of the narcissist. So when narcissists are too much involved with positive-minded people, they feel threatened. You know why? Because they know that once that artificial layer of filthy energy is burned away or it dissolves, they're in trouble. Any bad thing can happen to them. And here's the thing: because they've been persisting in denial so long, they're mentally dependent on that energy bubble. The moment that energy bubble pops or it dissolves, they mentally collapse, literally. That's why they tend to avoid positive-minded people. That's why they like to be around people who are wounded or similarly depressed as they are. That's why when you suggest a good outcome to them, to help them say, nobody asked for your opinion, no, I didn't ask for your advice, who do you think you are? They try to harm you so that you will end up in the same state of negativity as they are. They need the misery, they need the wounds of others in order to be safe. They need others to feed their misery so they are safe, because without that artificial layer, they literally collapse and they can end up committing suicide, or they can end up escalating, harming others just like that. Okay? So I hope that the concept of demonic contract is obvious now to you.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. So I have a few questions, if that's okay.
Yes, awesome.
Did I interrupt your stream of thought?
No. I just want to give as much information as possible. I did it, so now I can sink in. So you can ask questions now relating to the topic, and I'll just answer them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I think you did an amazing job explaining what the demonic contract is. And, as we discussed prior, my mind is continuously blown by the revelations that you're sharing. So here's one of the questions I have for you. So we know that one of the ways they break their demonic contract is by showing kindness or showing positivity to you, because that's not part of the deal. The deal is that they continue to feed negativity and seed the negativity and misery. So my question is, in what other ways do they break the demonic contract? Kindness is one. What are some other ways they break it?
Before I answer that, I need to emphasize the following. The unclean spirits, the demons, don't want to leave when they break the contract, because demons want to stay. But the demons need them to be in a state of bitterness, because it's that bitterness that feeds that artificial layer. Because without that feeding of that artificial layer, they're finished, and the demons can't even help them. So they are stuck literally at it. So one other way they often sabotage that own demonic layer is by asking for genuine help. When they ask for genuine help, they open themselves to love and positivity from others. The moment they do that, they start to act more human. And the moment they act more human, they emit less bitterness, and that layer on top of the energy field begins to fade a little bit. That's the same as breaching the contract, because now the demons can't quickly fix that layer. Okay, so that's one way to do it. Another way is they admit openly they don't want any solutions. Because when they openly admit they don't want any solutions, everyone's going to avoid them. And as a human being, they need to be involved with others. Okay, so the artificial layer is for them to get along with other human beings without being ever caught. That's the purpose. So the moment they are too obvious about and too open about the negativity, they also endanger the operation. So those are the ways they sabotage the contract. Okay. So another way is when they are too close around positive people.
So, sorry, my mind is just exploding. So in theory, when we discuss here on this channel, the sensation that we get that we feel like we're running our head up against a brick wall. We feel like we're not making any progress. We feel like the narcissist is attempting to recreate the same day over and over and over again. In essence, that is true because they have to, oh, you just said it and it slipped my mind the way you said it. But in theory, they have to maintain that. Let me start over. I'm sorry.
Take your time.
They have to pretend to cooperate. But the reality is they never planned on cooperating, and they never plan on cooperating because that's too human-like. Cooperation is part of being human. So when you start to cooperate for real, you are breaking your demonic contract. Is that correct?
That's correct. They have to fake wanting solutions, and that's what most of them do. They will call you, they even ask you to pray for them, they will even go to therapy with you and all of that. And you think, yes, finally, I'm getting through the individual. No, you're not. They just do that because they are dependent on that artificial layer that demons build for them. Okay, so the moment they really cooperate, let's say the bubble dissolves instantly, then they completely fall apart, and they actually act that crazy, really collapse. Okay, and they don't want that, so they are terrified of that happening. So, but they also are terrified of you abandoning them because they need to be involved with other humans as a human being. If they don't hate humanity, so they will fake cooperation to give you so much to let you think, okay, they're with me just so they can keep you around.
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. So tell me a little bit more about the fragility of the bubble and how, although it seems inconquerable and it seems like this big, massive obstacle, tell me, or tell us a little bit more about how truly fragile it really is.
Okay. See it like this. If you have a little child that blows bubbles, you create some soap, you put some stick in it, and then you blow the soap, and you have those bubbles bubbling around. And some of us did that as children. I did. That's how fragile the energy bubble of the demonic contract is. It needs constant negativity day and night for it to remain stable. And even then, it will only last maybe at least 2 or 3 years, no more than 3 years. Most of them collapse after a year, so they need to find another one. Okay, so see it like this. The reason why we see this bubble as this unconquering wall is because we're dealing with the physical outworking, with the physical violence, and with the emotional blackmail of the human being. But the thing is, if that narcissist does not do all of this, there's no negativity to stay in that bubble. And if there's no, because the bubble is there. Let's say, let me give an example to you how this works out in practice. Let's say you have a guy in the streets, okay, John. And I gave names just it's better for your subscribers to envision. Yes, so you have John. John walks in the streets, okay, and around him there are many people that are upset with him because he lied to them and he took advantage of them. They all want to teach John a lesson because this bubble is there. Whenever people look at John and they become upset, this negativity that's emitted towards John bounces off because of this artificial layer. Okay, so it's strong enough to bounce off negative energy, but not strong enough to survive positive energy. That's what it comes down to. Let me repeat that. It's strong enough to bounce off negative energy, but not strong enough to conquer positive energy. Okay, so if all those people want to address John, when they come close, they feel pushed away, because they are in negativity when they want to address John. So that's why John can walk on the streets and nobody deals a blow to him. If John hangs around if John gets into a sexual relationship with a female that's quite feminine, positive, her positive femininity will instantly break down that demonic bubble. And what happens next time John's on the street and people are upset with him, they now feel comfortable coming near him and beat him up or even shoot at him. So the artificial bubble can only ward off negative tensions, but it cannot survive positive emissions. That is why people that, let's say, narcissists who are in this contract, they tend to keep themselves in danger. And we, as outsiders, think, why do you keep yourself in such a bad situation? But here's the thing, it's in that bad situation that bubble works. If they go to a safe environment where everyone's kind and happy, that bubble will dissolve within days. And then, because they're mentally reliant on that bubble, they literally fall apart, begin to scream, begin to shout, begin to beat their heads against the wall or to run in the streets. They really mentally fall apart. And they know that it's about to happen. So that's why they avoid positive places and they go to places where there is trash going on. Now you can see why some people, when they everywhere they go, they look for drama and fights. There can be 100 people who are positive minded, and there's one guy who's wounded. They go right to the wounded one to start a fight. Why? Because they need this toxicity in order to remain safe. Their safety literally depends on the negativity of that bubble.
Oh man, I don't know if my listeners are having epiphanies like I am, but I hope you are. So tell me this. Tell me a little bit more about the dynamic of why are some of them actually, let me ask one question first, and then I'll hopefully remember the second. My first question is, are those of us who are covered and protected by Christ or Spirit, or we have the positive protection, do we run the risk of losing it ever? Do we run the risk of entering into demonic contracts? Why or why not? And then I'll ask the second question.
Okay. About this first question, very simple. As a human being, as I explained before, you're a vulnerable creature. As a spirit being, you need a backup for your spirit abilities because you don't have your own backup. The only backup we're allowed to have is the backup of the Heavenly Father himself, who's absolutely good, who's absolutely joyful. Okay, because this backup has a self-correcting mechanism that always works out well for you. The only alternative is the layer demons offer. Okay, and apart from those two, there is no backup. Anything can happen to you. Okay, so if you're walking outside, for example, and you have neither a paranormal, which is demonic, nor a supernatural, which is Christ-centered cover, and let's say there's a guy in a car who's about to mentally collapse, that car can easily hit you. But if you have a paranormal cover, the car may come in your direction. You may be hit, but you won't get wounded that much. Okay. If you have a supernatural cover, the car may completely bounce the other way when it comes to your direction. Okay. So we only have one real protection and you have a counterfeit one. Okay. And those with the real protection, it never fails. However, we need to operate in that power. Okay. And that's what happens to a lot of believers. They don't operate in the power by the Holy Spirit. And that's why they make themselves extra vulnerable to things they shouldn't be vulnerable to. So as a believer, you can never enter a demonic contract, ever. Not going to work. Because once you're saved forever. Okay? But if you are not renewed in your mind and you still have toxic expectations that society taught you, those toxic expectations become are a wound in your energy field that enables predators to drain you. That's the only thing that happens. Okay? But you can never enter the demonic contract. Okay? So you should operate in that power 24/7, and the more you do that, you'll realize that bad situations begin to flee from you instead of you having to flee from bad situations.
Okay. So then with that in mind, tell us a little bit more about those who have entered into demonic contracts. Sometimes they are naturally repulsed by us, and other times they are naturally drawn to us. So in other words, sometimes they flee from our presence, but other times we seem to attract them like flies. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's occurring there?
Okay, I'll explain it. So let's say now that you, PT, you walk down the streets. You're a female covered by Christ. You operate in the protection. Let's say you have a few narcissists around, but they don't have a demonic contract. Those without a demonic contract, when they see you, they feel repulsed. Why? Because you are so happy and they can't stand happiness because they're so mentally deformed. So they'll be repulsed by you, thinking, I don't want anything to do with you. But the one with a demonic contract, even though your presence is detrimental to their contract, they know that there's a possibility that they can use you as a psychic shield. Okay? Because that demonic contract is a type of shield against them in facing harm in life. But if they are around you, let's say the demonic offer fails, they now can use you as a shield. Now you get all the negative attention, you get all the bad happen to you, and they get off the hook. So that's why they become attracted to you, because the positive cover you have is far superior than the stinking slime that they have on top of their energy field. So now they want to take advantage of it. So the narcissists in a demonic contract, they are the smarter ones. They'll feel attracted to you, while those who are kind of dumb, they'll be repulsed by you.
Fascinating. Okay, so then that actually generates two new questions for me. The first one is, those of us who have the positive cover of God, of Christ, do we then become natural outcasts of society? Meaning, would we naturally often find ourselves alone, not really by choice, but because all of the environments that are available to us are filled with people who have taken out demonic contracts? Does that question make sense? And if so, what are your thoughts?
It makes sense to you. It makes sense. So I'll explain that. If you mind, I'll give a little brief history of the situation of how this has worked out. As I mentioned before, or as I said, I need to mention to your subscribers, society is a fear construct. Okay. Before the Greek Empire, that's like the 4th century BC, you had ethnicities were fighting each other and themselves to death. Okay, just to get relief. It sounds very dumb. That's what we as species were doing. Since the Greek Empire, when this guy Alexander from Macedonia established the Greek world, he forced all the leaders in the world to unite and integrate in one world culture, which was the ancient Greek culture. Okay. And all societies were reshaped after Greek dualistic ideals. And ancient Greek culture depended on the cover by demons, literally. Those Greek gods are demons, okay? So what they did was they suppressed femininity so that males would become mentally toxic. And by doing that, the demons were fed. So ancient Greek culture was all about keeping the males in a state of mental toxicity. And to do that, they had to wound the females from birth on. Females were hated and treated like pets by the ancient Greeks. They were only valued because they could give birth to children for the human species. Okay? What this meant was that as a man, you were expected to prove yourself to older men by going into gymnastics, so by going into working out your body, and by learning to be mathematical, because males are kind of analytically wired in their brain. Okay? So you had this system of pedophilia and sodomy in ancient Greece that is spread all over the world, in which as a man, to participate in the local community, you had to bend over to those older men who wanted to have their way with you. Okay, so that was common back then. So that was the culture that became the norm in the world. And the Greek Empire broke into pieces, and the Roman parts continued as a Roman Empire, in which it needs the Greek civilization under the rule of Rome. Okay, and even the calendar that we use are modeled after this devil worship. For example, you had the god Janus, a two-faced demon, that was used to renew contracts, including the money contracts at the beginning of the year. That's why we call it the man January. Then you had February. That's the month for females. That's why that's 28 days according to the menstrual cycle of a female. And the month for females was meant to exercise their hatred towards females. So you would have male politicians stripping naked, running to the city with whips, whipping the females they would encounter. And they would do such weird things. And if some women have children, they would take some of the babies and drown them in the river. They would express their hate of females in that month. Then the following month, after the females had been wounded, now the men would go to war. Mars, that's named after the demon Magog. In Rome, they called him Mars, and ancient Greeks called him Ares. Okay? Then you had April. Then you had May. So then you had August, the month that the military would come back. So that's why today, around August, you have graduations and all of that, and universities. So they modeled the world after the calendar of the ancient Greeks and Romans. Okay? So that's how society is formed. That's how it's continued until this day. And since the Greek Empire, all warfare are rituals to sacrifice blood, to keep the masses at ease. There are some civil wars and civil conflicts that were real, but war in itself is a hoax. Okay, all of them since the Greek Empire. So understand that that's how the ancient Romans and Greeks governed the world, and what kept it going was the sexual trauma of the population. So ancient pornography was literally humiliating men publicly, and the worst way to do this was through crucifixion, in which you would have soldiers raping a man naked and then putting on a cross, and everyone could see that naked man who was been sexually vandalized dying for the next couple of days. And crucifixion happened various times, sometimes even crucified little children, little boys, just to scare people. That was ancient pornography. So they did all of these things to keep the human population in a state of sexual fright and sexual defectiveness. Okay? So in the ancient Greek culture, which became dominant in the Greek and Roman Empire, and by the way, the ancient Greeks also forced the Chinese to establish the Han Dynasty. So all of the world was Greek, you can say. There was this thing called the Ganymedes Oath. The Oath to Ganymedes. Who's Ganymedes? Ganymedes is a fallen angel, a demonic entity that is kind of the butt body of Satan, you can say. And Ganymedes was the model of pedophilic relationships in ancient Greece. So Ganymedes was the norm of how that demon became the norm of how old men had to prey and lust after young boys. Because young boys, teenage boys were the sex models of that time. Okay? Sometimes even prepubescent boys, but that was in rare, but that later became more popular during the Roman era. So if you wanted some type of protection as a human being against the violence of the community, because fallen mankind is fearful. When you become significant and important in the community, due to what you do, to your influence, they tend to retaliate. If you want to be free from the retaliation of the human population you're in, you can either go to the Most High, to Yahweh, or the Heavenly Father to get your positive cover. That means that you operate in God's will, or you go to the demons to get an elite cover. Narcissists get a tiny cover. You can get an elite cover. But for this elite cover, you need to side with the demons against Heavenly Father, against your species, and you have to agree against human sexual health. You have to agree against females, and you have to be a man. At least that's how it was in ancient times. Later, we began to accept females, but originally was for men. You have to pledge an oath to Ganymedes, that pedophile god, and you have to go into dark rooms where they would sodomize you in a group. They would put feces, urine, semen all over you, sometimes even in your mouth and all of that. And sometimes you have to do the same also with younger men. You would do all of this, and then you would have things work out smoothly for you. That was the oath of Ganymedes. Later in human history, because the real Christianity, not talk about the Roman Catholic Church, but real Christianity began to destroy this Roman system. So the Romans had to fake being Christian. That's why they developed the Roman Catholic Church. Roman Catholicism is the Greek Apollo cult. That's the rule with a Christian mask, because otherwise we can't win from the positive cover of the Heavenly Father. And they even began to build all those churches to keep believers trapped. So since then, the world is usurping and draining the positive cover of believers to keep their negativity going. So they need our consent to continue their negativity in the world. This is how powerful believers are, but they're not aware of it. So now they had to, they had to cover up the Greek gods. So now instead of saying Ganymedes, say Baphomet. And when you look at Baphomet, you see this weird goat figure with wings, with female breasts, and a serpent. You think this is BS, but the Baphomet is a symbol for Ganymedes. So today, to become top in society, you have to take the Baphomet, as you call it, and the same dark rituals, everything applies. Okay? And for those that are in criminality at a lower scale, they have a mini version of it, which means you go through backdoor initiations. Okay? It's a similar thing, but not exact same thing, but a similar thing. So now you know those that become established in crime also took an oath demonically, or else they couldn't enter in. You can't even sell drugs on the streets for long without having a demonic cover, or else you're finished. So when you are a believer operating in the positive, understand the situation of the world. I just gave you the brief history of it. If you operate fully in positivity, there are many places where people just don't want you. Why? Because you are a danger to stability, because stability is a result of demonic covers. So if you operate in positivity, you're a threat. So they kick you out. Then there are places where they will tolerate you because they can exploit your positivity to hide their negativity. So that's the situation believers find themselves in. I'm going to stop now because I don't want to overwhelm you too much with knowledge. So let me know if you understood what I've explained.
Oh, absolutely. And it actually leads to so many more questions. So I actually do have a few. Do you have time?
Yes, I have time. So ask them.
Okay. And welcome to everyone in the chat. I hope you guys are enjoying the show. I certainly am. Rashid, tell us a little bit more about black magic and demonic contracts at the corporate level, and how we always think about celebrities when we hear about, oh, people sold their soul and things like that, and rituals and things like that. But it happens to everyday and normal everyday circumstances also. Tell us a little bit more about demonic contracts and black magic at the corporate level.
Okay, I'll do that. But if you mind, I'll explain about the celebrities before, so that your viewers understand what a celebrity is, how it works, because celebrity and the corporate world are one and the same thing. We tend to see them apart, but they're actually the same. It goes like this. I've explained that human species tend to flee. In society, you flee at the expense of a group. Okay? So the scapegoat is the one that's wounded, and because that wound, everyone's negativity flows towards that individual. Okay? And what happens is that human species, who are in a fallen state, we tend to violate victims just to escape or bail ourselves out of bad consequences. Because that negative tension, if it's not unloaded somewhere, we literally go insane and begin to kill one another, literally. So to keep our species from exterminating itself, in ancient times, we used to look for scapegoats to vandalize. Okay? In the Old Testament, they were not ready for the full revelation of Christ, so God tolerated them to do that with animals. Okay, now you can eat animals if you want, if they are not toxic for your health. But to abuse an animal just to unload yourself, that's low. But God tolerated it in form of animal sacrifices till Christ came. Okay, but so now you understand that context. The ancient Greeks realized that human beings bring forth this pollution. We don't want them to go to God because we are wizards, we worship Satan. So we want to keep them in this thing called society. So what we do is we bring forth victims that become the celebrated victims. And then you have victims that people just rape, beat, and kill. Okay, so 2 types of victims. That's why you have the Joker from. The Joker, you have 2 Jokers. You have the happy Joker, which is the one with color, and a sad Joker, the black and white one. That's how they do it in card games, because a card game is to reflect this game that the ancient Greeks invented on how to keep society going at the expense of scapegoats. Okay, so for those that follow my channel, I made videos about how I illustrated society with the hand of card games. You can watch that. But it goes like this. The happy victims are those who are not allowed to be human. So they have to force a smile and they're overwhelmed with luxury. That's to make you think, as long as I work hard enough, I'll be just like them. And those that don't succeed are the ones that you're allowed to smack upon to feel good about yourself. Okay? So both celebrity as the drug addict on the street dying are in the same category, but the celebrity is maintained. Okay? So, and the celebrity also eventually had to take the government out and all of that, so they are completely under their grip. So over time, that I'm talking about in the colonial era, that's far later in history, the Roman Catholic Church began to lose its grip on the masses. That's one of the reasons why they began the transatlantic slave trade, was to have a group of scapegoats now in the world, namely the descendants of the tribe of Judah in West Africa. Okay, and they sought to exterminate the blacks in West Africa because West Africa was the wealthiest and richest region on the earth back then, at the end of the Middle Ages. Well, the rest of the world was crumbling because the influence of Christianity destroyed the grip of the sun worshippers, the Apollo worshippers, I mean. So now they realized that, the tribe of Judah, even though they're not exactly a tribe anymore, because they've developed into various nations in West Africa, they are the biblical descendants of the tribe of Judah. You know what? Let's exterminate them so people can't even use them as a reference to the Bible anymore. Then we can have those counterfeit Judeans that we call Ashkenazi Jews take in their place so that we can steer the masses into this devil worship. That was the main reason why the Catholic Church started the transatlantic slave trade. It was but it later actually became a genocidal project in 1619. Okay, so that is the background of it. That's why black slaves were not allowed to read. They were not allowed to read, especially not the Bible. They were fed all the dirtiest food. Why? Because they were meant to build the beast system while not finding out who they really are. Okay, and during the colonial era, the Catholic system came with this thing called corporations. Now, corporation exists in ancient Rome also, but the corporation developed now related to export. And as an individual, you could join one of those corporations as a man, and you could work for them and you could get paid, because most people lived on the land. However, the Judeans in diaspora, or you can say, because Judeans were considered Africans back then because they lived in Africa for more than 1,400 years, since the destruction of Rome in 70 AD. So they were considered Africans. So the African diaspora, most of them, you can say they were Judeans, they realized, no, we need to be free. After the Haitian Revolution in 1795, and it was also the same year that the Dutch government collapsed. The Dutch were one of the main, out of the Dutch government, not the Dutch population, the Dutch government, the Dutch elite were one of the main investors in this genocidal project of West Africa. They realized it's over. So even Britain, because many of the British young men since the 17th century were forced into participating in the slave trade, or else they were finished. So in Britain and in the Netherlands, people wanted this thing to end, slavery. Napoleon didn't want it, so what happened was that the corporate structure emerged in the Napoleonic Empire, which was very short-lived. The Spanish Empire survived it, and so they developed these structures in which they wanted to keep people away from working on the land. Napoleon was a racist, and he wanted everyone to merge into cities and leave the land. Because at the time you had major big cities, which had around 30,000 people maximum, sometimes a bit more, and then you had small villages everywhere with farms between them. So everyone had a sustainable economy locally. Okay? What the Catholic system intended to do was replace gold and silver coins with paper money, so that the treasurers of the Catholic Church, namely the Rothschild and later Rockefellers and those families, could manage the flow of paper money. The goal was to merge people into those urban areas so that people would not be farmers anymore, so that people would stock at paper money paid out to them by those corporations. And Napoleon was an agent to enforce this. But all his efforts failed, including the invasion of Spain. And that is how the corporate world came into being. And later in the 19th century, when the corporate world was established, many people were removed from the farms and from the villages. Many of the villages were merged into urban areas. So now people depended on being paid this paper in exchange for labor. That's the only thing they had. And the way they kept the population obedient, the white population, also the Asian population, all of them, was by giving them alcohol to drink and giving them a lot of red light districts. Those were used to let the men think the world loves us. Satan loves us. He cares about us. This all work in the factories away from promises for our own good and for the good for our offspring. That's how they tricked them into doing it. But there were revolts because people realized it doesn't work out. So eventually the corporate world had to give some free days, like holidays like we have today. So the corporate world is designed to enslave the whole human species, because until 1795, enslaving blacks was easy. Afterwards, it became hard. Okay? So they had to find a way to continue slavery because they couldn't freely enslave blacks anymore. They still wanted to violate blacks because blacks became the scapegoat of the whole world, but they had to enslave the rest of the human species. And that's how the corporate world came up. But to make the corporate world work, you need to have a guard to keep people in the corporate world. And that's where the police comes from. Okay? The police as an institution emerged in the Spanish Empire. Okay? You had those, the Spanish Empire I mean, the whole structure. I'm not talking about the native monuments like in the Mayans or the Incas. I talk about the Spanish structures, and their cities were built by black slaves. So blacks were the reason why the Spanish Empire became the world's dominant power. So when the time Napoleon invaded Spain in 1808 and all over the Spanish Empire, that means all the way from Alaska to South America, including the Philippines and all of that, people were revolting. They wanted liberal change. And they came up with this constitution in 1812 that would give everyone full Spanish citizenship in the Spanish Empire. But there was one thing. Blacks were not allowed to become citizens because you had those racist white Spaniards who were born into the Americas that wanted to look down on blacks. Because there were a lot of free black people also in the Spanish Empire that were not slaves, but that contributed to the economy. Because even if you were a slave, often you still had some liberty. So they want to take away all the liberties of the black population, whether they were slaves or not, to enforce this Napoleonic racism also, while pretending to be against Napoleon. You get it? So now, because this issue emerged that they didn't want black people to be citizens, there were revolts, and the white racists eventually destroyed everything in the Spanish Empire. So eventually the Spanish king said, okay, I have enough of you. I don't negotiate independence anymore. Get out. And that's why Latin America has become the way it is today. All this is relevant to understand that that's how the corporate world emerged. The Spanish Empire collapsed, which is our stability, and now the British Empire took over and they enforced the corporate world worldwide. And in the corporate world is the warlock cabinets that enforce the black magic on the masses, namely the men. Okay. Later in the 20th century, we came to use corporate witchcraft also. But the reason I gave this history lesson is so that you understand how it all came into being, so you also understand why it works the way it works. So the police, which was installed as a national institution in Spain throughout the empire in 1819, that was later adopted by the Spanish territories and also by the rest of the world as an institution. That's why we have the police today. Okay, so also the police are part of this black magic operation. So before I continue, do you understand what I've explained till now?
Yes, you set up how this is all kind of emerging and how it's shaping up to be what it looks like today.
Okay. And that's why in the corporate world it goes like this. You need the men to be convinced that the system is for them, even though it's not. You have racism that you can use on the white population, on Asians. They can look down on blacks, you can do that. But amongst the Europeans themselves, or the ancients, you need to have something else as incentive towards them. Using alcohol and prostitutes and also tobacco kind of became outdated eventually. And also a lot of women became upset. So a lot of women were allowed in the corporate world, which was actually only assigned for men also. So what you do then is as follows. You tell them that society depends on them working. Even though that paper money is printed at some ritual place. So you convince them that their labor keeps everything going. Okay? And the labor is only there to cover it up. Okay? So when you do this, the men feel validated, they get psychic relief. But then you need a scapegoat to blame. And the ones you blame are the people without work or immigrants or people on welfare. Even though people on welfare get the same printed cash as they do. So them work or not doesn't take away that those people in welfare receive cash or not. They are convinced that it's their labor that makes those people eat. And that's how you get the Republican Party. And at the end, you have the Democratic Party that's more for people on welfare and people that are not accepted into the system. So it's both duality that keeps things going. So that's the corporate black magic. Corporate witchcraft is when they take females that are mentally ill, they stress them out further, and they make those females the role model for other females. That's corporate witchcraft. And that comes from another Greek institution in ancient times in which they would have families donate some of their daughters from childbirth on, and those daughters, or sometimes they were female prisoners, they would end up in this sodomite cult where those female ringleaders that would sexually exploit them. And those women became this energy sponge of the community. So anytime the community had a lot of tension, especially concerning domestic violence, they would send some of those shamans out there, and they would perform sexual ritual dances for the men, And once the men focus on them, because the men were wounded, now all the sexual filthy energy of the men would be sucked into those females' bodies. So they would literally suck up the sexual violence from the community. That's how they used those females from those cults. And later this became the Vesta Virgins in Rome. And from there, you had the nun system in the Roman Catholic Church. And later in the corporate world, they enforced this through feminism also. So corporate witchcraft is just the continuation of the ancient Greek institution of using a small group of women as energy sponges of the community.
Oh man, wow. And Rashid, you'll have to forgive my laughter. If you watch any of my videos, you know I'm kind of just a very entertained person. So
That's fine.
Okay, it doesn't take much to set me off. And when you said that they recruit mentally ill women and make them more mentally ill, I don't know if I've ever heard a more true statement in my life. So forgive my laughter. I just want you to know that I'm not laughing at anything you said. It hit me right in the chest. Okay. I have another question for you. And then I actually would like to start doing a few viewer questions if you do have time still.
Yeah, I have time.
Okay, perfect. So my final question is this. Based on what you've said, it sounds to me like, and trust me when I say I am the eternal optimist. However, I'm an optimist based in reality. And it sounds like what you're saying is, I'm paraphrasing, but we have all these human rights causes that we fight for, right? Fight for this, fight for this, justice for that, make this right, march for this, march for that. When the truth of the matter is, and I hate to say it this way, we might be wasting our time because the current system is set up to always have some level of misery in it in order to feed the demonic entities who are in contract with those who are over society. So in other words, in order for me to continue to protect you, this business, this corporation, your money, your wealth, you can never, ever really truly be good to the people that you're serving because that is breaking the contract.
Yes.
Does that question make sense? And if so, will you elaborate on that, please?
Yes, I'll elaborate on it, and it makes sense. It goes like this. It goes even deeper. When someone is just a common pagan, whether someone's a witch or a warlock, and they only use witchcraft or black magic for their own success, so they don't intend to harm people, they can still do some good for other people because they're just using the paranormal, but they're not really bad people. But those that take the Baphomet oath, they are told very plainly, the cash flow you get is accursed. So there's going to be plagues with it. So if you decide to help out a relative who needs to pay rent, you can help out that relative by donating $500 so they can pay rent, but later they may have a car accident because it's accursed. So those people that take the oath, they cannot afford to really help people because every time they do it, they'll be accursing and harming other people. So the only thing they can do is waste the cash flow they get assisted by the unclean spirits. That's why you have so many black celebrities, for example, but there's so many bad stuff going on in the black community. And where are the black celebrities doing something about it? It is because they've taken the oath and they can't literally help the black community because whatever they have is accursed. They have to waste it. Through charity organizations, they can ask the people, commoners, to donate something good, and they can use the goodness of the people to accomplish something. But they themselves cannot literally do it because they've taken the oath. And first of all, they've promised to go against human sexual health and against the Heavenly Father, so they cannot actually be constructive because that would cause the negativity to dissolve. And if negativity dissolves, neither the demons nor they can benefit from it.
Wow, that makes so much sense. And it explains why. And for those who might be new to the chat, I myself am African American, so I know everyone can't always tell from my voice. So I'm allowed to talk about this, okay? But it makes so much sense then why the Black community really does struggle to progress in a meaningful way because we're really working against two different things. We're working against the system itself in the sense that it always has to have a level of misery to feed off of. And sorry, Black folks, looks like you're it. So you get to stay on the bottom because that ensures that we always have someone to feed off of. So that's the first thing we're working against. The second thing we're working against is those individuals who actually have the ability to help us, those who have come from the community and been elevated to positions of power, those who have taken the oath can't help us, because if they do, they are cursing themselves, basically. So in order to help us, they basically have to sacrifice themselves in many ways. And they would rather not do that. So they contribute to the dysfunction on an ongoing and daily basis because it pleases their oath keepers, or whatever we want to call them, and also feeds the greater system, which needs somebody at the bottom in order for that misery to be fed off of. Is that correct?
That is correct. And I want to highlight the following. The system now is not as powerful as it used to be before the emergence of real Christianity. When I talk about real Christianity, I'm not talking about those churches out there, not the Catholic Church. I'm talking about the real Christianity, the gospel. The gospel smacks down the power, the effectiveness of this Apollonian system also. So that means that the real way to shut down the system is by operating in the positive cover of the Heavenly Father. So here's what comes down to, PTA. The way we can shut down all of this is by just not believing the false promises of the demonic realm. Very simple. And especially the men need to listen to this, because the system depends on draining masculine sexual energy. That's why they use sex magic on the masses. For example, you look at the flag of the United States. That's an expression of sex magic right over there. Well, if you tell that to people, think, what? Sex magic and American flag? What's going on? Look, colors affect people. Blue tends to psychologically calm people down. Red tends to stir up urges in people. That's natural, okay? So those Apollonians, let's call them like that, because they worship this pitiful sodomite god Apollo also. This what it goes. They use color codes to sexually trap the male population into a draining state. With the Spanish Empire, this happened to be the flag. That red, yellow, red flag of the Spanish Empire was designed to trick the men, to motivate the men into sexual excitement, so they would have more babies and invest more in the Spanish Empire. It worked till everyone in the Spanish Empire turned on each other of that same excitement. So then, now the Latin American countries often use blue flags because blue tends to calm people down, like Argentina and those other places. Blue was used for the elite and red for the common people. But now the Latin American republics use blues often because they need to calm the population down, and just so that they don't turn on each other. Japan, for example, is a red nation that uses red sex magic because they want to stir the population. Which they used in the 19th and 20th century, that Japan went from a ghetto into a world power, regional power in Asia. But it had the side effect that a lot of the men were so stirred up sexually that became suicidal, and a lot of sexual crime happened. If you look at Europe, for example, you have European Union, they want to be blue. That's why you have a blue flag with a sun circle in the form of stars, which refers to the beast system. But the blue is to calm the population down, so that the trauma of Second World War doesn't work out into the Europeans going off at each other. That's why they use blue. So the system uses methods to calm people down because they know that what they're doing will escalate. So at one hand, they pretend to be Christian through the Catholic system and those pagan churches, as I call them. Then they also use sex magic in politics and in the media and in the corporate world, just to regulate the men's sexuality. And then you have the criminal world, where they pretend these are the bad guys, kill them, that we're better off. All right? So what it is that the men in the world are the target, because it's male sexual energy that's the fuel for the demonic realm. So they need to convince the men that the system is for them. That's why pornography became almost normalized in some areas. By the way, advertisement is a type of pornography, but most people won't tell you that. That's why you have all that entertainment in the mainstream media. All of that is to convince the men that the demons love you and have the best for you. So as long as the men keep believing the scams of the world, this thing will continue. Because the more men realize, I don't have it, it begins to fall apart.
Wow. Okay. Let's take a few viewer questions, and then we will wrap up. So maybe do you have another 30 minutes or so?
Yes, I have.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you for being so gracious with your time and so gracious with the knowledge that you're sharing with us.
Mhm.
I don't think I'm going to sleep tonight because I'm probably going to listen to the playback over and over and over again. So thank you so much, Rashid, from the bottom of my heart, honestly. So here's our first viewer question. I can't display it because StreamYard cuts off the comments after a certain time frame has gone by, but eventually I'll be able to display them so you can actually see them. The question is, it says, so the sexual act creates physical and spiritual consequences, thus impacting the genealogical generations, correct?
That is correct. Let me elaborate a little bit on it. We are energy, we are spirit beings or energy creatures, as I already explained. Okay, our bodies are mortal, so they will expire. Okay, and we go into Sheol, where we are stored in the archive till Christ returns, and we are resurrected in immortal bodies. Okay, so as spirit beings, when a man sleeps with a woman, it's in spermatosis, spirit matter that becomes a human being. Or else, when she becomes pregnant, it's only a body that grows, and she gives birth, and the body is just a body. It dies. But because there is a spirit matter that becomes a human, that one is born. That's why you have every baby is a living being. You get it? So, if someone is sexually defective mentally and involved in sexual activity, not only is it polluting their own body, if they have an offspring, the offspring will carry some of the tension with it while they're growing in the womb and when they're born. So that's where generational curses come from. It's the tension of the environment transferred onto the baby.
Wow. Okay. So here's another question. It says, is there a difference between the person afraid to show vulnerability due to prior hurts and a narcissist, or is the act of hiding in and of itself narcissism?
Now, very simple. If someone hides vulnerability because they've been hurt multiple times, that's a coping mechanism. And for a short while, that's okay till they realize they need help. But if they persist in this coping mechanism and they even go so far they think, you know what, I better not be human at all, I just want to exploit and be left alone, then it has become narcissism. And it's then that they eventually become dependent on the money contract.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting because, in essence, what the narcissism really is the rejection of the humanity, the purposeful
Yes.
and active rejection of humanity in exchange for essentially everything that goes against humanity.
Yes, they want relief, they want all the best of life without actually participating in life. Okay, and that's what that's what narcissism is, and the demonic contract eventually enables them to, on the short term at least, get away with it.
Wow. Okay. Let me see here. Um, the question is that how the black sheep of a family becomes the energetic sacrifice?
Yes, correctly. That's the dynamic of it. Once a child is wounded, it is an energy wound because we are spirit beings. From the time of conception in the womb, you are a spirit being. Okay, so when a child is wounded, the energy field is still information. So if the child is wounded and the environment doesn't intervene to so the child is healed, others will feel comfortable dumping their negativity on the child because there's a wound there that attracts their negativity. Okay, so then you will also have evil spirits that will begin to literally drag people towards the child, so that others can treat the child badly, and that's how that child becomes a magnetic dump site for the bad of all the other people, and that's what often happens.
And is this where, so personally, I don't like to see like practical jokes and pranks, like when people put shaving cream on people's face when they're asleep and things like that. So is this where these little and don't get me wrong, I'm not without humor, like I have fun, but is this where these little picking on type behaviors emerge to constantly get that negative aura flared up so they can eat?
Let me say like this: when it comes to scapegoats, commonly, a lot of children use as scapegoats. That's why you have this norm in human species. You can beat your children. That comes from King Solomon, who was a pagan, by the way. He forfeited God's knowledge. Um, That's that is something that's been in human history all along. But here's the thing: those practical jokes are just jokes. People just prank one another. They don't mean any harm. But the thing is, many of those practical jokes, the origin comes from paganism. Okay, for example, the clown. Okay, what is a clown? In the ancient Greeks, used to do the following: they would pick a girl or a man, they would sexually abuse the individual beyond measure, so the individual's mind is completely messed up, so the individual really cannot take responsibility because they're so mentally broken down. Because there comes a point when someone is so mentally broken down that they can't take responsibility anymore. They really become a living mess. And once the individual has become a living mess, they put the individual out in the community. So everyone encounters this individual, and this individual is so uncomfortable to be around that everyone begins to treat this individual bad. And once everyone treats the individual bad, they feel relieved. And what the ancient Greeks would do is eventually they would put a white robe on that individual, put makeup on the individual, and that individual would become the laughingstock of the community. And this went on till the 19th century. Okay? Till people realized, okay, this practice is very bad. We shouldn't treat people like this. But the image of the clown, so always colorful makeup, is the image of a fallen angel, Asimony. Also, so actually, it's the image of Asimony that they project on the survived rape victim that cannot think clearly anymore. So that's the origin of the clown. So when people are clowning you, they're actually exercising a ritual sacrifice, but without the intention to sacrifice you. They don't tend to sacrifice you, but that's where the practical joke comes from. You get it?
Oh, absolutely. One more question from the chat, and then I have a final question, and then I'd like for you to tell everyone where they can find you and all that. So one question that has come from the chat is, what happens ultimately to the children of narcissists? And I would like to add to that and say, do they have different paths to choose, or are they doomed in one direction?
No, first thing first, they're not automatically doomed because the parents decide to be stupid. They're not. If a child is born in a narcissistic home, the environment also has to be narcissistic for enabling those bad parents. So when the child is older, the child can clearly see the environment neglected me. And once they accept this, no matter how painful it is, they can process it, and eventually they can recover, and they can be born again, and they can be eternally joyful. That exists, and that happens a lot. Some other children decide, you know what? If I take the pledge to the demonic contract, it will be easy. Let me do that also. Some become like their parents because they want to flee like their parents. So that's on them. Okay. But if you had narcissistic parents and you still have toxic thinking that is left inside of you, don't blame yourself. Just look for better options and you're out of it. So that's fine.
Wow. Okay. So I'm actually going to close with a final question. And there's certainly so many more that I could ask you, but I don't want to take advantage of your time that you've been so gracious with. But I did ask you before we came on the show if you might be interested in future shows, and you indicated that you might. So
Yes.
we certainly, I think, will have to do this again. I think the chat will demand it of me. They will find me and chase me down and force me to have you on again. But here's my question. What, if any, hope is there for the future as society stands currently? Not on any, artificial optimism, but based on where we currently are and the trends that we're currently experiencing. In your opinion, what, if any, hope is there for the future, and what should we be looking forward to, good or bad, in the next maybe few years?
Okay. Thank you for mentioning this. I'm going to keep it to the next decade because I'm not a psychic, so unexpected things, good or bad, can happen as intervention. But it goes like this: the world system, as I mentioned before, since the Roman Catholic Church, they go into phases where they have to rejuvenate themselves to continue. Okay, so that's it goes from the Viking rule to French rule to Germanic rule to Portuguese rule, Spanish rule, Dutch rule. So that's how it goes in the world. And what has happened lately is that the American rule has ended 2008, and there was this transfer towards more of the Islamic dominance in the world. But it was delayed because there was no Islamic leadership that stood up. And then the Islamic leadership that stood up was kind of terroristical. So it's that filled. And I also have this COVID-19 thing, and you have black people emerging, and white supremacy crumbling here and there. So there's a lot of crisis in the world now. So I don't see how they're going to restore this and to keep this world system going. But what we can expect is more escalation, because the world needs people to dump upon. Okay, I'm talking about the world. I'm not talking about beliefs. I'm talking about the world's population that does not obey the Heavenly Father for their negative tensions, to prevent them from devouring one another. Literally, they need to dump, because collectively they can't dump Islam blacks anymore. There's going to be there's a sacrificial crisis. Who is going to become the next collective victim? Okay, and so that's what you can expect coming years. That things are going to escalate more. It's going to have more stabbings, more riots, more gun violence, more massacres. So you're going to see all of that because you can't dump. What you also will see is the recovery of the black community by those that embrace the cover of Christ. And with that, you will have more positive flows happening at the same time throughout the human species. So there are good things emerging right now that we will experience, but you also have retaliation from the world against the good that will happen. Because this is what goes on now. The generation that's alive, and people that are alive now, have two options. Either they submit towards the positive cover of the Heavenly Father, or they're drawn more and more into the narcissistic pit of the demons. And that's what goes on now. So what we should do, all of us, is to just unlearn the scams of society. And the more you do that, the more renewed you are in your mind, and the more you will operate in real joy and real positivity. And this is what I need to highlight. Positivity is not toxic. What they call toxic positivity in the world are just people that just use phrases to feel good without actually being positive. Because if you're really positive, you face reality, you face how bad it is, and you also face that evil is just persists in lack. And if you don't persist in lack, you've overcome evil already. So real positivity overcomes and shuts down evil by making it irrelevant. But if people just sell beautiful phrases to make you feel good, that's not positivity. That's just denial. So what you see now is that denial becomes less attractive, and people want real positivity. And that's why people like me, people like you, should continue what we're doing and expect the best in life despite all the violence. And eventually, this system of violence is going to destroy itself and try to take as many people with them. And then we will have the second coming of Christ suddenly in full joy and the resurrection of the dead. But we don't know when that will happen, but till then, we ought to be active.
Wow, those are very, very powerful closing words. Thank you so, so much. I can't even express my gratitude to you right now. And just the vibe from the chat is the same. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap the show. Would you like to tell everyone how they can find you and where they can find you on YouTube and anywhere else, if you have anything published or anything like that?
Okay, my name is Ari Dosset, Rashid Emiliano Dosset. You know that. You can find my YouTube channel. I believe PTE showed it in the description of this live stream. I post videos almost daily. I have over 5,000 videos. Some of them are quite old. I had PTSD a few years back, so some of the videos, I kind of have a speech in them that they couldn't speak properly, due to the stress of the PTSD. But those videos I let up because it's still positive news. Now that I'm delivered from PTSD, all my videos are a bit more fluent, so you can watch me there. And as a scholar, I will also be publishing scholarly pieces in the future. You can type in my name, and you can find some of the master theses I've published also. I have two. Actually, the third one is coming online soon. So that's it. And for your record, I'm 29 years old, so I'm not really that old. I'm born in 1991. So the picture you see on the back on the icon, that was my hair in 2015, and it's still growing to the same size right now. And I also didn't age. So you can find me on my channel. You can send me an email also if you have urgent questions. So, and just realize I'm here just to assist. I'm not God. I'm not taking any glory. And I want you to look for Christ first, the Lord, because He is the source and He has all the solutions. I don't. So that's it for now. And PTE, you're free to close the live stream.
Thank you so much. And will you hang back just for 2 seconds, just so you and I can close out privately after I close the stream?
Yeah, it's fine.
Fantastic. Thank you, everyone, so much for joining. This is super exciting for my first interview. I think it went amazingly well. I think we had the perfect first guest. I couldn't have asked for more. So my gratitude is sincere. and I'll say it many times, so I apologize for the repetition. Thanks to everyone who joined in the chat. If you're new to this channel, please do subscribe. We discuss narcissism in our society over here. And if this is your first time hearing of Rashid, please go to his channel. It is linked in the description box. Please subscribe and check out his library of content. I need to get like you, Rashid, and post every day.
No, just let the Holy Spirit guide you. There's no need. If you have my anointing that you teach multiples of people, then you do it daily. If you don't have that anointing, just follow how God's plan is for you. There's no problem.
And that is great advice. And with that, I am going to close the broadcast itself, and I'll chit chat with you shortly after. Thank you all for joining. I can't wait to watch the playback and read your comments. Talk to you very, very soon. Bye.
Bye.